Welcome back, and in this demo lesson I'm going to step you through how to create an AWS account. This might seem simple, but it's important that we start off with the same best practice foundation. In the real world, most businesses and projects will use more than one AWS account. So rather than teaching you using sandbox accounts or using a single AWS account, you're going to create a few accounts that you'll use as you move through the course. Now later in the course you're going to link these together using AWS organizations as you start to learn about multi-account management. For now though, we're going to start with a single account, and before we get started with this, I want to show you visually what you're going to be creating over the first part of the course. Within the first part of the course, you'll be using two AWS accounts. Now, if you've done any of my other AWS courses already, this might seem familiar because I use the same structure in all my courses. You can either continue to use the existing structure if you're still within the free tier period, or create a brand new set of accounts. If this is the first course of mine that you're using, then please do create new accounts. Don't use your existing AWS accounts, don't use sandbox accounts, and I would generally recommend against using accounts provided by an employer. Using real AWS accounts is the first step to learning how to use AWS effectively in the real world. Now, the first account that you'll be creating is the account that you're going to be logging into, and we're going to start by referring to this as the general AWS account. Later in the course, when you start using AWS organizations and learn about multi-account management, you're going to hear me refer to this as the management AWS account. Just know that the management account and the general account are the same thing. We're referring to this first AWS account that you're going to create. So this will be the first account that you'll create, and as you know by now, when you create an AWS account, an account root user is created along with it. And it's this account root user that you'll initially log into this general AWS account with. Remember, the account root user is specific to this one particular account, so this account root user has full control of the general AWS account. Once you've created this AWS account, you're going to secure it, and this is done by adding multi-factor authentication, also known as MFA, onto the account root user. Now, historically, this was a physical device which generated a code which changed periodically, but you can also use an application on your phone or tablet. The idea is that a physical or virtual MFA is associated with the account root user. Then, instead of just needing a username or password to log in, which can be leaked, now you also need a one-time code which is generated by the MFA device or application, and this means it's much more secure. You're also going to be configuring a budget, because while the course is going to be as much within the free tier as possible, if you do leave anything running, this might have a cost and will want you to be notified as soon as possible, so a budget helps protect against any unintended costs. Now, we also want to avoid using the account root user as much as possible because you can't restrict it, and because there's only one of them per AWS account. Now, because of this, it's best practice to create IAM identities within your AWS accounts, and so you're going to create an IAM identity, an IAM user, within the general AWS account called IAM admin. Now, this is just a normal IAM user which you're going to give administrator permissions over the general AWS account, and this is the identity that you're going to be using for the remainder of the course when you're interacting with the general AWS account. Once you've fully created and configured the general account, you're going to repeat that process to create a second one, which we're going to refer to as the production AWS account. So this is a brand new AWS account with a brand new account root user and a brand new IAM identity within that account, also called IAM admin. Now, this will be the starting structure that you're going to be using throughout the course. Before we get started though, I promise you a trick to make creating multiple AWS accounts easier, and that's what I want to talk about next. Now, this is a feature that I know 100% works with Gmail. It may work with other email providers, but I can only guarantee Gmail at this point. When you're creating AWS accounts, you should view them as disposable, and you should create as many of them as you need. You already know why, because they're containers and they isolate things inside the AWS account. It's actually better to create a new AWS account structure for every course that you do because it keeps things isolated and safe and secure. Now, because AWS accounts require unique email addresses, this can make it a fairly painful process to create them. Historically, 10 AWS accounts have required 10 unique email addresses, but that's not true if you use a feature available within Gmail and some other email providers. Let's say that you have a Gmail address. In this case, it's catguy@gmail.com. So this email address is constructed of two parts: the username on the left, so catguy, and then an @ symbol, and then the domain, so gmail.com. Now, normally this would allow you to create one AWS account using the catguy@gmail.com email address. But what you can do is you can use the plus sign in the email address to create an infinite supply of unique addresses, all of which go back to this main account. For example, you could take your username, so catguy, and then add a plus, and then put AWS account 1. So the whole email address would be catguy plus AWS account 1 @gmail.com. You could also create a second, this time using AWS account 2, and then even a third, using AWS account 3. Now these are all unique email addresses, but they've required no configuration. You just have the one single Gmail account which comes with the one default email address, so catguy@gmail.com, and all you do is use the plus symbol and then include any text, and that creates a brand new unique email address from the perspective of AWS, but you haven't had to configure anything on Gmail. You just take your normal email address, you add some text after the plus sign, and that creates what's called a dynamic alias. It's a brand new email which always points at your main Gmail account. So you can use anything after the plus symbol, and it creates what looks like a unique email address, and you can use this address to sign up for an AWS account. So this essentially gives you an infinite number of unique email addresses using one single Gmail. So at this point, you don't have any reason not to create a brand new set of AWS accounts for every single training course that you do. Now let's switch over to the console and get started creating the first AWS account, so the general AWS account. Okay, so now I've moved across to my web browser, and to create an AWS account, you're going to need a few things. You'll need an email address for the account root user of that account, and remember what I've just talked about on the previous screen, how you can create an infinite number of unique emails to use. You'll also need to choose an AWS account name, and this is important because it will help you identify the account. You'll need to set a unique password for this account root user. You'll need billing information to add to the account. Now the account does come with a free tier allocation, so you won't be billed against this billing method unless you actually incur charges, and I'll be teaching you throughout this course how you can keep track of any charges on your AWS account, and the course itself, where possible, will be within the free tier. In addition to this, you'll need to verify your identity, and you'll also need to choose a support plan, even if that plan is the free one. So to get started, we need to go ahead and enter the email address for this AWS account. Now remember, this is the general AWS account, so you need to pick an email which makes sense to you for the general account. I'm going to go ahead and use this format, so Adrian and then a plus, and then training AWS general @cantrill.io, and this uses Gmail. You'll need to pick something that makes sense to you and is unique to you, because this email address needs to be unique, and you do need to be able to receive emails to this address. Now, depending on the version of the user interface that you do have, and this can change very often, you might get this box pre-populated, so this AWS account name. Now, I want to make sure that this account name makes it easy for me to identify this account, so I'm not going to pick this generic cantrill.io. For me, this is the structure I'll be using, so AC, my initials, hyphen training, hyphen AWS, and then hyphen general. This is for the general AWS account, and I'll be changing this general to production when I create the production account. Now at this stage you'll need to verify the email address, so once you've entered all of that information, go ahead and click Verify Email Address. You'll receive a verification email containing a code to this address. It could take up to 5 minutes to arrive, and do make sure that you check your spam folder. Once you do have that code, enter it into this box and then click on Verify. Hopefully you'll see that the email address has been verified, and then we're good to continue. And it's at this point that you'll need to pick a suitably strong password for the account root user of this account. Now I recommend using a password manager to generate a strong password. So go ahead and do that, enter that same password into both boxes, and then click on Continue. Next, you'll be asked for some account information. Generally, this will be a personal AWS account for your own projects. So pick the appropriate box, enter the appropriate information here, check this box and click on Continue. And I'm going to be hiding this information for privacy reasons. Next, you'll need to enter some billing information, and this payment method won't be charged unless you incur charges against the AWS account. I'm going to keep this course as much within the free tier as possible, so this generally shouldn't happen. Now, it's worth noting that you might notice a pending payment on this credit or debit card, which AWS used to verify your identity. This pending charge will generally disappear within a few days. It's only used to verify that it's a valid billing method. So go ahead and enter all of this information and then continue, and once again I'm going to keep this information redacted for privacy reasons. This next step is a simple identity verification step. You'll need to pick the method of identity verification, either SMS or voice call. I'm going to pick SMS because generally that's quicker. You might only see one or the other of these options, or you might see both. Just pick the one that's appropriate. For SMS, you'll need to enter a valid phone number to receive text messages to, so I'm going to enter my details. You might need to complete this security check by entering these characters, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then I'll move on. I'll wait for the verification code to arrive, enter it into that box, and then move on to the next step. Okay, so at this point, you're going to see one of two different screens. If everything's gone okay, you're going to be asked to choose your support plan. If you have issues with your billing information, so if your credit or debit card wasn't able to be verified by AWS, then you'll see an error screen, and this error screen will inform you that there's a problem with your billing information. Now you need to be aware of how to resolve this problem with billing information, because there are a number of steps that you need to go through in order to end up with a fully functional AWS account. So next in this video, I'm going to show you how you can resolve issues with your billing information. If you don't have any issues, then you just need to wait, finish watching all of the next set of steps until this video gets to the page where you can choose your support plan, and then you can continue. Now I'm doing this because I want you to be aware of how to finish setting up an account in both of these situations. So if you're having no problems, if you see the screen where you choose your support plan, then just wait until I get to the same point in this video, and then you can continue. But it is important that you experience all of the different problems you might have when setting up an AWS account. So let's get started stepping through how to resolve a problem with your billing information. So to fix this, you'll need to click the link to sign into your account. You'll need to make sure that you're signing in as the account root user if you have that option, and then enter the account root user email address and move on. You might have a security check, so complete that. Enter the password, and you'll be logged straight into the billing console, where you'll need to verify the payment information that you entered. If you did enter it with any errors, you need to update the payment information to correct details, or optionally you might need to call your bank or the provider of your debit or credit card to fix any issues that they have on their end, such as declined payments. Once that's fixed and the payment method has been updated, we can move on. So once we've corrected our billing information or contacted our card issuer to resolve any other problems, the next step is to encourage AWS to verify those billing details. Now the way that we can do that is to click in the services box at the top and type EC2 and then open that in a new tab. And it will probably give you an indication that the AWS account might not be fully activated. The first thing to do is to click on this first option to complete the account setup process, and this is likely to take you to the screen where you have to pick a support plan. Make sure the free support plan is selected and then complete the sign up process. Then move back to the AWS Management Console by clicking this button, and then try that same process again. So click in the search box at the top, type EC2 and open that in a new tab. Now, if you see this message again, what should be happening in the background is AWS are performing a verification on your billing method. Now, this could take several minutes, and I find a way to encourage this process is to click on the link that says verify your credit card information. So if you go ahead and do that, either click the link or open it in a new tab, it will take you to the billing console. In the background, what you should find is that you get an email from AWS telling you that your account has been fully set up. And to make sure the account is fully activated, if we click in the search box at the top, type EC2 and then open that in a brand new tab, at this point you should now see the EC2 console with no errors. And that means you've corrected the earlier problems with your billing method, and you can now move back to the main AWS console. Now, if you didn't have any problems with your billing method during the setup process of your AWS account, then this is what you should see on your screen. At this point, you'll need to pick the support plan to use. For training accounts, we default to using the basic support plan, which is free, and this will provide just enough support for any account or billing issues. If we need anything more, if this is a production AWS account, then we need to pick developer or business support. Now, I'll be covering the details of these other support plans, if appropriate, elsewhere in the course. For now though, go ahead and pick basic support and then click the button to continue. Now at this point you should see a congratulations screen which tells you that AWS are activating your account. Now this activation can sometimes be instant or it can take anywhere up to an hour. In my case, I've already received the email, so normally it is relatively quick. Once you do receive the email, you can click to start logging in to the management console. And again, you'll need to use the email address associated with the account root user. You might have to complete a security check, but then you will have to enter the password for the account root user. And once you've logged in, you'll be at the main AWS console. Now, the first time you log into the console, and depending on when that is, you might see a dialog requesting that you try out the new version of the AWS console. AWS are regularly making changes. If you don't see this dialog, then that's okay, but generally whenever you see any dialog which suggests a new version of the new UI, I always recommend switching to that new version. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we're logged into the main AWS console. Now don't worry if you do see some error or warning notifications when you first sign into the console. Often these widgets take time to populate. There are a few final steps that I want you to do before we finish up creating this AWS account. To do that, click on the account drop down at the top right and then move to account. Now again, I've blanked out all of my personal information. What I want you to do though is to scroll down on this screen. Then optionally under alternate contacts you can click on edit and enter your details for all three of these contacts. If you are creating an AWS account for business reasons, then often you might have different billing, operation and security contacts. Now you don't have to do this step, but if you are creating this account for real world usage, you might want to enter these details. What I do want you to do though is to continue scrolling down and under I am user and role access to billing information, click on edit, check this activate I am access box and then click on update. This is going to make sure that if you're logged in as an I am identity, then you have full access to the billing console provided you have permissions. If this box wasn't checked, then even if we gave an I am identity full admin permissions, it wouldn't be able to access the billing console. So it's important that we allow access to this console. Now at this point that's everything that you need to do in this creating an AWS account video. So move back to the console, and one last thing I want to mention is throughout this course, whenever you're interacting with AWS, generally I'll want you to be in the Northern Virginia region. Now what region is selected by default depends on where you're logging into AWS from, and this region selection does have the tendency to change. So generally, as you're working through any of my courses, continually verify that if the region is selected, it does say US East 1. If it says anything like global, that's okay, but if it displays a region, make sure that it's US East 1, and if it's not, go ahead and change it back to Northern Virginia. At this point though, that's everything I wanted to cover. You've completed the account setup of the general AWS account. So go ahead and complete this video, and when you're ready, I'll look forward to you joining me in the next.